So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Antonia Wunderlich, and on behalf of the British-German Association, I'd like to welcome you to this online event. For those of you who are joining us for the first time today, the British-German Association is a charity and membership organisation founded 70 years ago that promotes mutual understanding and good relations between the UK and Germany. And part of what we do is to provide a vibrant forum for debates, talks, discussions and learning about Germany and British-German relations. So we regularly put on events such as this one, along with other initiatives such as our monthly newsletter. Before handing over to our moderator, Caroline Galvan, to introduce the topic and our distinguished speakers, a quick note on the technology. There will be a Q&A session after the discussion, and it will be conducted via the Q&A function, which you should be able to find at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So if you click on it, you can start typing up and sending in questions, and please feel free to do so over the course of the event. You can also like someone else's question, and the more likes a question gets, the higher it goes up on the list. So I'll now be handing over to Caroline, who's a board member of the Future Society, a US think tank to advance the governance of responsible artificial intelligence. And she also serves as senior counsellor at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. So on that note, over to you, Caroline.
Thank you very much, Antonia. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I would like to welcome all of you for a discussion today on the future of artificial intelligence. I will apologize up front. It is somewhat embarrassing. My internet connection is not very stable, so if I disappear, I might switch off my camera for a few minutes. Nonetheless, let's go ahead. Today, we are taking a close look at artificial intelligence. Where do we stand, and what are the approaches taken by Germany and the United Kingdom? And of course, in the spirit of the British-German Association, how can we work together to safeguard an AI-driven future? Before I hand over to our panelists, I wanted to give a very brief overview of AI and set the context for today's discussion. Now, over the last, I would say 10 years, artificial intelligence has really entered the public consciousness. What is artificial intelligence? There's many definitions out there, very technical ones, but I think broadly speaking, it refers to the aim of creating intelligent machines that emulate the full range of human cognition and to exceed it eventually. And I think it's fair to say that AI has been a dream of mankind for quite a while. You just have to take a look at, let's say, the science fiction. And there have been many attempts in the past, and many failed attempts that are often referred to as the so-called AI winters. But what has changed this time around? There are broadly three enablers for the success that AI has had over the past couple of years. One of them is the increased digital connectivity. There is, second, the unprecedented rise in computing power. We can do things that were hitherto not possible. And there is the ability to store a rapidly growing amount of data and use it to train algorithms. And some people have, in fact, referred to data as the new oil of the economies. There are many opportunities linked to AI. I'll just name a few. There's mitigating climate change. It can be used to safeguard and monitor biodiversity. We can make our cities more resilient through the use of smart cities. We can facilitate personalized medicine and drug discovery. But of course, always when there are opportunities, there are also risks. There's a risk in my mind when it comes to inequalities. There's a risk that AI actually perpetuates existing inequalities through the bias and decision-making algorithms. For example, when it comes to the use of AI in recruitment, tools in credit scoring. There has been a famous study in the US on criminal justice. There are significant concerns when it comes to privacy and AI safety concerns, such as the use of facial recognition technology. And there are national security concerns and also concerns around the use of lethal autonomous weapons. Thus far, large-scale investment in AI has really been concentrated in two economies. There's the United States, which very much dominates the AI landscape in terms of research, output, talent, investment, infrastructure. And there's also China. And that begs the question, really, how can we govern artificial intelligence that transcends really boundaries of the nation state? The increasing use of it really poses the question around what kind of new and evolving regulatory framework can we build? What kind of values do we want to embed in AI? There are a few efforts at the moment. There is, for example, the OECD principles on artificial intelligence, which is very much a value-based approach. There are the ongoing discussions on the European Union's AI Act. There's a global partnership on artificial intelligence that was incubated by the G7, and there are many industry-wide initiatives such as IEEE or ISO. Now, in view of this landscape, what can countries do to reap the opportunities of AI and mitigate the risks? And what will collaboration really look like in the future? And I am delighted to have the opportunity to discuss this today with our very distinguished panelists. In the spirit of the BGA, we are taking, of course, a closer look at Germany and the United Kingdom. So I'd like to warmly welcome, first of all, Professor Dame Wendy Hall. Welcome, Wendy. Professor Dame Wendy Hall is a professor of computer science at the University of Southampton, where she is also executive director of the Web Science Institute. She is really a pioneer of the very first hour. She was one of the first computer scientists to undertake serious research in multimedia and hypermedia, and she has been at the forefront ever since. It's hard really to list all of her achievements, but some of them I will make an attempt. She co-founded the Web Science Research Institute. She became a Dame Commander of the British Empire in 2009. She's a president of the Association for Computing Machinery. She's a president of the British Computer Society. She's a member of the World Economic Forum's Global Futures Council on the Digital Economy. She was a co-chair of the UK government's AI review. She's the first UK government's AI skills champion. And she is a member of the newly formed AI Council of the United Kingdom. Professor Antonio Krüger, welcome to today's session. He also has many hats. He is Professor Antonio Krüger is a CEO and scientific director of the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence. He's a professor of computer science at Saarland University, where my family is actually from, so I'm really excited to see you. He's a head of the Ubiquitous Media Tech Lab and scientific director of the Innovative Retail Laboratory. And he is, of course, also an internationally renowned expert on man-machine interaction. He is also a private sector player. So he co-founded a tech company called iLED, which focuses on the development of mobile and ubiquitous information systems. And he has published over 200 scientific articles and papers across recognized journals and conferences. Without further ado, I welcome both of you very warmly to today's sessions. And we will take a couple of, I would say half an hour to really take a step back and look at what Germany and the United Kingdom have done. So I will hand over to Antonio to really ask you, what does AI, what does the landscape look like in Germany? What does the AI landscape look like? What does the policy landscape look like? And where do you see the opportunities and challenges?
Yeah, Caroline, thank you very much. I have to say I'm very delighted to be part of this panel, of this discussion, especially with Dame Wendy Hall, which work is worldwide recognized. It's great actually to be part of a discussion how the German and UK AI strategies refer to each other, what we can learn from each other, and maybe also where the differences are, because this is also often even more interesting, because I believe many of the points that we'll discuss now are similar, but there will be some differences, and those are the ones that are interesting to explore. The German government has published, I would say, not very late, in a late stage, but it was not among the first ones to publish an AI strategy. Others were much faster. But since 3 years now, Germany has an official AI strategy. Of course, there's always an unofficial one, which is driven often by very strong research groups that are, of course, present in Europe, in Germany, in the UK, and in other places, of course, also worldwide. But this AI strategy is built, if you look at it, it's of course a long document as usual, you know, and it has been then a little bit updated last year. If you look at it, it has 4 pillars. You know, one is about talents. This I think is super important. It's maybe if you talk to scientists, you know, talent, attracting good people, attracting young talents, keeping senior talent, you know, is among the most important points actually. So talents. It's of course about excellent research. It's about infrastructure. AI needs infrastructure and particular kinds of infrastructure. And infrastructure, I include here, I would include actually quality of data, diversity of data, and so on. And then the fourth point, I think very important to all national strategies is transfer. So how to bring actually good, excellent research results, findings from research into business, into economic and societal impact. So in Germany, and the AI strategy in Germany kind of follows more or less these kind of 4 pillars. So education in Germany itself, state of affairs is as I think Wendy would also agree, in the UK we have a high standard in basic research actually in Europe. Also in Germany there are very good institutions. In Germany we have most important universities are funded by the public hand, so actually education comes directly, it's actually funded by the government. We don't have tuition fees in Germany, at least not these public universities. And then we have kind of research institutions. DFKI is one of those, but it's a smaller research institutions with 600 scientists that work on AI. We of course have Max Planck, we have Fraunhofer, Helmholtz and Leibniz. So the big actually research institutions that they focus not purely on AI, but of course there are groups that work on AI, and especially very good groups also in Max Planck and also Fraunhofer. And given the federal structure that we have, the central government can support actually education, but it needs to be careful in a way how it does it. So for example, it set up, the federal government set up a large online education program on AI, the so-called AI campus program. I think this is one of the remarkable attempts. And this aims to provide AI online courses, not only for computer scientist students, but for all kind of different students. I think this is also an important aspect. Of course, as a computer scientist, I'm primarily concerned actually with education among computer scientists in AI and computer scientist students. But we have to acknowledge that AI will play a role in many other domains, nearly all domains in the future, scientific domains in particular. So it's also important to educate to a certain level also students in other fields. This is, I think, an important point. Second, a matter of attracting talent and to Germany. The strategy foresees a special program actually to implement, initially it was said 100 new AI professorships in Germany. This is not so easy to achieve. 3 years ago, people were a little bit optimistic, but most nowadays everybody agrees, you know, it's not so easy to just, you cannot basically find, you know, talent everywhere. You know, those people are very in demand, you know, also from industry. So there's a fierce competition actually, also among academia and industry about these people. We have a very good program, the Alexander von Humboldt professorship program, which aims to bring people back from abroad, yeah, and provides huge funds actually, yeah, and Wendy is laughing because of course
I've lost several professors back to Germany.
Yeah. It's a little bit
Southampton.
It's one of these things, you know, where also usually there is of course also competition within Europe. This for sure. And I think this is something that Germany has recognized, that of course there are many Germans also in the UK, but there are also many British citizens that are professors in Germany. But in particular, there are many actually in the Silicon Valley. Yeah? And to make actually to attract these people back, we have these kind of very strong Max Planck professorship director posts that have very good actually equipment, nearly no teaching load, very much focused on research, and we have these Alexander von Humboldt professorships. Those are the two means, I would say. But this aims actually at people I would say, that are really excel actually in the field, in their respective field actually. So attracting talent, this is an important point. Also developing particular graduate programs for PhD students in AI, for example, is something that that we are aiming at. For Germany, of course, when it comes to transfer, and here I think this is a very interesting field, because we have to acknowledge that the economic impact of AI basic research results in Germany, at least, and I would even extend this to Europe, it does not lead to so much economic impact compared to, for example, the US or China. So this is something, at least, that Germany has observed. And so the national AI strategy concentrates also on how to transfer these results. And now, if you look at Germany, and maybe also at Europe, but in particular in Germany, the economy, of course, we have large global players, but most of the economic revenue comes from small and medium-sized enterprises that are often family-owned. Those can have maybe even a couple of thousand employees. So these companies seem to be bigger, but in fact, the structure and so on is still, those are many of those are still family owned and have a kind of a more family-like governance structure. And for Germany, it's crucial that, and those companies often are market leaders in their segment. So those are many automotive suppliers, production suppliers in particular. And one of the goals of actually the German strategy is to enable these small to medium-sized enterprises to incorporate AI, into their products, so that they can keep actually this leading position in their market segment. So, for example, we at DFKI, we have a concept that we call transfer labs. Transfer labs is a combination of a PhD graduate school and actually a project together with industry. So it's kind of a combination of these two things, where we try on the one hand to transfer results, but then also to directly be able to carry out AI related research together with companies, because the big advantage here is that AI often requires data, and data, that's something that companies usually have, and that research does not have and requires. And finding good ways, how in a trustworthy environment interaction can take place is, I guess, important. And this is something that Germany tries to do and tries to support. We have so-called Mittelstandzentren, which are aimed actually at this kind of particular enterprises that convey AI knowledge and so on. So this is, I guess, an important part. We have special regional future centers for AI funded by the German government that that helps actually to establish this kind of link of also of education from research institutions into actually application domains. And then finally, I believe also the AI strategy accentuates the responsibility that AI research and AI development has. This is something you also mentioned, Caroline. Germany tries basically also to make contributions into that direction. Of course, we've seen actually and we are kind of rooted there, of course, in the European Union. European Union has made this suggestion for the EU regulations that are still under discussion. Germany has contributed to that discussions. Also, different institutions in Germany, including DFKI, have contributed here. And I think this is very important, because what we should aim at in Europe is to promote AI that is trustworthy and transparent, and that regards a certain ethical constraints. I strongly believe this is something that Europe is good at, and this is something that we should exploit, and that could be actually the brand, the AI brand for Europe in this respect, because it's completely different actually from how the US and also China operate in that field. So I believe here it's clear AI is a key technology today already, but even more tomorrow. It will be tomorrow. And having something like AI made in Europe that respects certain value leads to a trustworthy AI that people want to use and that is safe to use and that people trust. I believe this is something that's a laudable goal that we should try to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antonio. Absolutely incredible to hear about Germany's efforts, the 4 pillars of talent, research, infrastructure, and transfer. And I will hand over to Wendy to tell us about the UK National AI Strategy. And again, it would be interesting to hear about the differences compared to Germany, where you see the overlap and where you see differences in approach. So over to you, Wendy.
Right, so let's see if I can share my screen first. This is the thing that is that working? Okay.
Yes, we can see it.
Good. So I've got these slides because I happen to have a set of slides. So I said, and actually, I'm not gonna go through the detail of all of them because I want to try and pick up on what Antonio said and do the compare and contrast. And actually, when I was looking at these slides just now, they go into far too much detail in the middle, so I'll skip over that bit. But this is recent, in a way, it's recent news. This new AI strategy. Oh, first of all, there's a slide about me, but you don't need to know that. This is what I do, and this is my new book. So, but this is this helps you recap where we've come from and the new news, which is that we have a new national strategy. So I got involved in this. So let me talk about this from my perspective first. I got a phone call from number 10, which I'm sure most of you know, that's where our Prime Minister works from and lives. Back in February 2017, asking me to co-chair an AI review for the UK, and I was co-chairing it with Jerome Pesenti, who at the time was the CEO of Benevolent AI, and he was very much he was from industry, and what they asked us to do was look at AI from growing the AI industry in the UK. So from an economic perspective, basically, and the growth of AI companies and what was needed to nurture that. So it was separate from that, our research councils were producing an AI strategy for research. So they were linked, but quite separate reviews. And it's very hard to remember October 2017 because it was pre-COVID. Don't you find that pre-COVID things are that was pre-COVID, right? So how did it work in those days? But going back to 2017, it was about the time when the World Economic Forum published their what was it called, Industry 4.0 book. And it was really all the world leaders had been to WEF, World Economic Forum in Davos, as they used to do, and they'd had this book and they'd been told that those that didn't succeed in AI were lost. And, and Kai-Fu Lee also published his book at the time about AI and, China versus the US. And it was like, well, from our perspective, UK's perspective, this was after the Brexit referendum, remember, we were like, well, what does a small island off the coast of Europe, which we always have been and always will be, what does it do in this space? And how is it going to benefit from all this? Clearly, we were going to, as Germany does, we have a very strong legacy in AI research. And we have a very good startup culture in the UK. But most of the economic benefits of all that goes to the US and the big data companies that are founded in the US. And I look at the Fraunhofers and the Max Plancks and with envy in terms of somehow the scale of that we don't have that in the UK. But nevertheless, they still suffer from this same problem that most of the big, you look at the growth just the growth of the companies in Silicon Valley, their worth compared to what we're doing in Europe. And then of course you got China. So that was the that was the premise on which we did the review, and we had to do it very quickly, and we published this in October 2017. It was accepted. The recommendations were accepted. I won't go into them now, this is history, but the recommendations were accepted by the government. The one thing that I will pick, there's a lot about skills in it, a lot about data. And I just want to pick up on Caroline's point. I must say it before I forget. You use the phrase "data's the new oil." I like to say at that point, and it could be as toxic for the planet as the current oil is, because this is one of our major problems. Data is king, and we have to be very careful about how we manage it, who owns it, and who can do what with it. As so much of it is going outside of Europe. Anyway, so where was I going? Yeah, so the other thing I want to mention is that apart from skills and talking about data and how we get industry to adopt AI, we actually had the Alan Turing Institute had already been set up as a national data institute, and as part of the review we named it as the National AI and Data Science Institute, and that's quite important because it's a focus for a lot of things that's happening now. So then that gave the government permission to, not permission, it gave the civil servants permission to write a business case for the government. I found out that doing this stuff for government, once you have a report recommended, that doesn't actually mean money. It means permission to write a business case to get some money. So that was, we got the sector deal in April 2018, which I'm told was very quick, only 6 months after the recommendations. And out of that came the Office for AI, which is a civil service. It's not a separate department, but it links, because our digital and AI world is split between 2 departments in government, between the Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport, and between our business and innovation department. The Office for AI is spread across those 2 departments, but it's there to basically implement these plans. And we also set up the AI Council at that point. Well, I didn't, the government did. And as you said earlier, I'm on that as the skills champion. And Tabitha Goldstub is the chair of that as the business champion. And that advises the Office for AI effectively, and government at an arm's length. We are not civil servants, but the Office for AI are. And then we jumped to, the middle of COVID, where we were all meeting virtually, and it was time. We had basically implemented the things that were in the first plan. It was time to look at it again and see where we needed to go for the next 3 to 5 years. So we produced a roadmap as a council, and that then fed into government. It's a rather similar pattern, and led to the publication of the new national strategy, which I'm going to tell you a little bit about now, which was written by the Office for AI and published this September. So it's only a month or so ago, and that has fed into the government's budgets, planning, and the Office for AI are now writing the business case, right, just as before, to work out or to ask for money for bits of the programme, which will it goes through the due course of government. So that's the stage we're in now. They're writing the delivery plan, and this is a very crowded slide, but and actually I find it quite hard to explain sometimes picking up on this slide, which I don't want to go into too much detail. There are 3 pillars. One is investing in the long-term needs of the AI ecosystem, and skills sits under that. And there they've got reduced competition for AI skills. That means, we're going to grow more talent. That's the sort of negative way of saying, we're going to have more talent, and I'll talk to you about that later. Ensuring AI benefits all sectors and all regions. So there's a levelling up thing here. I don't know if you've heard that in English politics. It's all about everything is in London and it needs to go around the nation. But it's actually about getting adoption by industry, or adoption of AI by industry, and growing AI companies. It's that same thing again. getting government to procure AI and how to do that. And the World Economic Forum AI Centre have done a lot of work in this area that we're picking up on. And basically making sure that there's value for money in what we're doing. So that's the, I can't actually, the slides get. And then the third pillar is governing AI effectively, which is where you put the data governance, the AI ethics, responsible AI, and the whole issue of how do we ensure trust going forward when there are so many examples of AI systems that are developed that. And this is a really, you know, that the public have been wary of. This is being talked about a lot in COVID. Things have been done with data in crisis. How do we manage that going forward in such a way that people trust in protecting privacy and not becoming a surveillance state? All the face recognition issues, all this goes in that pot, responsible innovation, and it's about ensuring that we maintain our place in global AI. And I mean, there's a high level collaboration in things like the Global Partnership for AI, which Germany is a member of. We're all, you know, all the Western democracy countries are members of the Global Partnership in AI. India's a member, China isn't, right? And this is my worry about all this, is just as with, I'm being very frank here, but just as with anything to do with climate change, you know, China is a huge force in this world, and it's really difficult. We have different cultures, we have different values, but we need to collaborate in order to ensure that this amazing technology is used as a force of good in the world. And what that means this is what my book's about actually, what that means in different countries is different things. It isn't that they're all bad and we're all good, I don't think, but they have to be at the table. And that's a really difficult balance for our politicians. And I don't know what Antonio thinks, I find it a difficult balance for us as scientists as well, because I actually work a lot with China. I've been to China a lot and I want to continue to do that. And it's a very difficult balance in terms of how our governments are working in these areas. But anyway, that's diverse. That's really a bit of a diversion. So I want to skip over the next set of slides are really quite detailed delivery of the next 3 to 6 months. Is how they're doing the implementation plan, and I want to land on this one so I don't take too much time and talk about focusing on the thing I know most about, which is talent. And in the first AI review we did in 2017, we focused very much on higher education, because as Antonio said, I don't have to repeat what he said about how long it takes. Well, I'll say it in a different way. I always say it takes a very long time to grow an AI professor, right? They don't just appear on trees overnight, okay? And all countries are trying to Germany's very good at getting its talent back. It's been doing this for a long time, long before anyone talked about AI skills. But actually, countries all over the world have a talent recruitment scheme of some sort. Ours is called Turing World Leading AI Fellowships. And I'll say we're not as good as Germany at bringing our talent back, because I learned my lesson as a dean, how much money these Humboldt professors get. I couldn't possibly match it, but there is this issue of you've got to, if you're going to create master's students, PhD studentships, they all need supervising. They all need professors to teach them, train them, supervise them. And so you've got to be pushing at the pipeline at all levels. And so last time, as I said, we did higher education and we introduced 2 master's schemes. One is funded by industry, actually, which was to get more masters, people coming out of computer and maths courses doing AI masters and being ready to go into industry and work. And then something, because I'm passionate about diversity and the lack of diversity in AI across the board in terms of you know, the types of skills we're bringing into AI, but particularly, of course, in gender, and underrepresented groups in other ways. And so we came up with this scheme for AI and data science conversion courses. They're master's level, and they take students from non-STEM subjects. So we take historians, artists, you know, the course is designed to teach people who have not got a science background necessarily, and get them in to be able to work in the AI in the broadest of sense, in terms of policy or in terms of legal compliance issues, or you know, work in industry to help. And so these have been a game changer, because the key thing about these courses are that as I say, they're designed to be taught of help people from non-STEM subjects get into AI, and 50% of the government funded scholarships had to be awarded to underrepresented groups. And in the first round, that was women, people from ethnicity, you know, ethnic cultures that weren't getting into the degree courses, and people with disabilities. And they've been game changers, and we're doing more of those. You'll see that in a minute. So we are going to fund, there will be more PhD scholarships and more centres for doctoral training funded in this new round. But we're also allowed for this time, which we weren't last time, to talk directly to the Department for Education. It's a very political thing, that, but we have been. So we're looking much more at skills at pre-university or not university, so boot camps and apprenticeships and developing toolkits, and Antonio talked a bit about this, and generally are offering these, you know, awareness courses or more detailed courses across the board for everyone, for kids, for parents, for teachers, people who are already at work, lots more online courses and awareness modules. And right, so that's something that we will be doing much more of this time round. Now, which screen am I on? I have to remember. So, and I was really pleased. I'm nearly at the end now. I'm gonna, but this is our Chancellor in his budget recently. He picked up on AI, and he actually said we will be creating 2,000 more. I've got to get it in front of me. 2,000. He called them elite AI scholarships. He did for disadvantaged people, but that's the people I was talking about, underrepresented groups. And we're going to double the number of Turing AI world-leading research fellows that we've just done a round of those. So to help ensure that, so that was in the budget speech. So that means they are going to fund some, and I was really excited that he picked out the diversity one for his statement. And this is the last slide I have, which is, again, it's so important to me that we work really hard collectively to change the culture of AI and not have it seen as something that only technologists can do, and that, you know, people are going to be done to by AI. This has to be this has to be a collaborative thing, and we have to have diversity across the board. And it's, you know, it's bad enough in computer science, but in AI, the diversity, if you look at the technology pools, it's really bad. And I put this, I think it's so important that I put it under the ethical. If it isn't diverse, it isn't ethical, because if you don't have diverse teams developing it, then you're much more likely to have bias and pick up on stereotypes. So I try and get people to think of it as part of the ethical checklist, but we can discuss that. But that's my last slide, really. That's my sort of particular focus on where our strategy is going. So let me stop sharing there.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Very insightful. I wanted to take an opportunity before I would ask the audience to put in any questions in the chat, and we hopefully have time to take one or two at the end of the session. But I did want to come back to both of you. So we heard a few recurring themes, such as skills, data and data representation, China, how we enable industry, university collaboration and transfer into the economy. But my question really to both of you is, where do you see areas of potential cooperation between the UK and Germany? Where are the strengths? What can we do, and how can we build or reinforce our relationships and collaboration in that area. So I may hand over back to Antonio if you want to provide some first thoughts.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a very important question. First of all, I would like to comment actually on what Wendy said on getting talent back, and Germany is very good at it. Yeah, the problem is that we lose it at the first point, that's the thing, and I believe UK is better there than Germany to not let people go, actually. Yeah, and we have the problem, and this has something to do actually with also German structure, academic career paths, and it has also to do, I believe, with diversity and the chances actually to pursue an academic career in Germany, which is complicated, yeah, and this is something where we can learn from others a lot. We try, but it's very hard actually because resistance is there and so on. But that's always the same thing, and especially in academia, things that run for 100 years usually keep on running for 100 years, even if it doesn't make much sense to keep it on running. That's a little bit the point. And therefore, it's important to have a look actually. What are the advantages of the systems? What are the disadvantages, and try to learn and then advocate and promote. And I guess these kind of promoting early talent, keeping early talent also in the country, I think this is something where we should definitely also collaborate, because then we won't get also into these kind of competition situations at a later stage, where we then have to fight everything back from the US, for example, try to getting those back. So that's I think that's an important point. Regarding actually collaboration, so UK and Germany has a long history of collaboration in AI, but also in computer science in general. I have many colleagues actually that I personally collaborate in the UK with. Of course, now with Brexit, this has been a little bit more complicated. I very much hope actually that we can keep on the funding scheme for joint collaborations. This I think is super important. You might that's often what I say. You can argue about how efficient European funding in research is, but in terms of kind of economic, even scientific output, you could argue. But what it has done in the last 20 years, it has basically tied strong networks across Europe, this is for sure, and this is super valuable. And this is something we should definitely work on to keep the possibility to strengthen, to develop also new networks and so on. I believe that's something, and currently it's a little bit in a kind of, I would say, high energy state. We don't know exactly, how this will settle, but I very much hope that we'll be able to do this. This is not only in AI, but of course, AI is an important, as I said, technology factor for the future. So it will be important for all kind of AI research, but also for all kind of other scientific disciplines. This will be important, yeah. And so here I see possibilities and chances, potential to collaborate, yeah. I very much hope that politicians will see this. So I think they understood it a little bit, but in the end, often science and research is actually the last field that they want to fight battles on. Usually it's about, I don't know, agriculture or fishing or so, yeah. And although I believe this is also important, I guess for our future in 10 to 20 years, for climate change, and so on, it's important to get scientific collaborations also set on good fundaments. And this is something definitely, where at the moment, maybe one of the most pressing issues, to enable this future collaborations.
Yes, it is, and I agree with you, Antonio. I do feel we are being used as a bit of a political pawn at the moment in the UK. I don't want to be too negative, but the Horizon funding is not set, not stable. No. That agreement is not stable.
And I just want to, it's important actually.
Yes, and I do worry about that, because without that, it's much harder to collaborate. It's not impossible at all. I think we have so many long-standing ties that we need to nurture that. I would say, so as well as that, I would say what we can work on is, let's call it not AI ethics, responsible AI. I think everyone's struggling with this. You have this, let me just give an example of something that when I was a young lecturer, AI was about expert systems, and there was, machine learning wasn't conceived because you didn't have the data, and face recognition was thought of as a pretty impossible problem to solve in the general sense, right? I'm talking in the 1980s here, when my colleagues were working on speech recognition and face recognition and video processing, and we didn't have the compute power and we didn't have the data. Now that's all changed with neural networks, deep learning, machine learning. That's the era we're in now. And it was a pipe dream 40 years ago. And people, when they were, working on this, they didn't think about the social consequence. In fact, it was just as we've done with the web, we didn't think about this, really, the deep social consequences of what might happen when this technology becomes ubiquitous. And now we're in a world where everyone thinks, well, of course, China uses face recognition for everything. Actually, we all do too. Our countries are all using it. And there are no real checks and balances. And it's the same in the US as well, and different states are approaching it. And that's just an example of something that's sort of crept up on us. And now we're developing even cleverer things. And think about GPT-3, is that the automatic generation of text by computers. And of course, it's amazing what you can do in natural language processing, but what are the social consequences of all this? And how do we as researchers think about the ethics, or develop, the what responsibilities do we have, and how do we help our colleagues in industry? And sometimes, of course, like you, Antonio, you mix, you're straddling both sides of that, and I've done in the past as well with companies and things. How do we help our colleagues in industry and in government tackle these questions? Now, these, I think, are things we can really collaborate on. The EU has produced its AI Act, which bravo to the EU. I don't agree with all of it, but it's something for us to tilt at. And I think that we think about these things very deeply in Europe. And as we talk about in my book, sorry about this, data protection is very important to us across Europe, and I'm including us as the small country on the just outside Europe, but I think we can lead the world in this. I think we can, and I think we really should be collaborating on those issues, because that is, for me, not competitive. This is, so I mean, of course we can collaborate on technical research, of course we can, we always have done, and I hope we can have schemes for exchange of PhD students, and as we always have done, and then that's really important. But I think the issue of responsible AI transcends all that.
I very much like the idea also, Antonia, that you pitched earlier, that we can really, that can be our setting point as countries within Europe, right, compared to the US and China.
As a brand, I think we have the chance to do so. And there's this misconception that actually regulations kind of hinder actually innovations. I think this is not true. It depends a little bit, of course. It has the potential to hinder, but if it's well done, it can even foster innovations. Yeah, and I believe, and I think this is an important, because this is often an argument that people bring forward that say, yeah, you have to leave this to the market and so on. And I'm not convinced here. Also, GDPR in principle was a good idea. Yeah, maybe again, you can argue this rule maybe is a little bit too strict or so, but okay. But in principle, and what we see, what happened is that this is something that has received worldwide actually attention, and also the big techs have basically adopted it, because for them it's even a good thing if they have clear rules and they can rely on those rules.
Well, they've adopted it for when they're dealing with European data, aren't they?
Yeah, of course, you have to push them.
It is a good thing to have it raises is the discussion about it?
Yeah. Of course, and the same is true for the EU Act. I agree with Wendy. You know, there is a lot to criticize. In particular, this is also something we have to keep in mind. We want to also help small companies, you know, to bring out innovations and to compete against the big ones. You know, and this is the problem. This is the inherent problem with regulations. Regulations are usually much easier to handle by big companies because they have huge legal departments, you know, they just work on complying to the rules, and the small ones don't have this, and then they get sued and then pushed out of market. So we need these kind of room actually for small startups, for small businesses to develop, and then at a certain point, however, those rules need to apply. You know, I think that's the way how we should go. And the current EU Act, to my taste, is not kind of reflecting this issue in a well-balanced way. But, you know, in the EU, we have these large processes, you know, currently it's kind of commented and then it will be discussed. So it takes a while, but I'm pretty convinced that if we end up with a smart set of regulations, you know, that kind of reflect our ethical values, that kind of focus on diversity and non-discrimination and so on, then this can be a brand that produces trustworthiness, you know, and this in the end is something that people want, you know, they want to use services and know, okay, this is something that is safe to use, that it's clear that my data is not sold somewhere, you know, or used in a way that I don't like and so on. And having a framework that allows this is something that is that can only be built in Europe, actually, because in the US and China, they don't know how to do it. It's very simple. Yeah. They don't have experiences with it. They don't have experience with the process, how to achieve this and so on. So this is a big chance that and potential that we have, but we can also basically ruin it. You know, there's still also the chance. So we have to be careful with that. And we
absolutely.
Need to I would slightly disagree with you there, but I agree with almost all you said. Yeah. But the last bit about the US and China don't know how to do this. China do know how to do this, and they're bringing in data protection rules, and they're bringing in algorithm regulations. They call them, they're regulating around the use of algorithms. They don't, but they have cultural values that we don't. You know, they're very different to us. But the US is different again, right? I mean, sorry. I
think the value-based approach to AI and creating a response to AI, we should very much have a follow-up event on that one, because it is the question of the times. We need to get it right now. I would like to actually go back to some of the questions from the audience, and some of them actually relate to our discussion just now. We had a question from Professor Juliet Lodge around Germany and the UK. What can we do better to actually persuade industry to use biometrics and AI in a responsible way from the outset, rather than kind of just an afterthought or an add-on? And that again relates to
not just industry; it's our governments too. And our police force. I don't know what it's like in Germany. I can't speak for Germany. We have tons of surveillance cameras in the UK. And we don't have clear laws about how we have some, but not clear laws. And I feel safer. This is what Antonio was saying about, trustworthiness. I feel safer in a car park at night, knowing that there's a CCTV camera there. If I thought that CCTV camera was keeping a record of my face and storing it in a database without me knowing, I'd be very worried about that. So, and our police forces are definitely trialing it in different ways. And there is no clear, we have data protection laws, obviously, and we're still GDPR, right? We're reviewing it, but we're still at the moment totally signed up to GDPR. And, so we have those in place, but it's not clear. There is not a clear regulation around the use of face recognition in CCTV cameras in the UK. Now, I don't know what it's like in Germany, but, these things sort of creep around the edges of the regulation somehow, because they're clearly the police forces want to be able to catch, as we want them to be able to catch criminals, right? So, I don't know what it's like.
Some difference in terms of attitudes towards, I think, to that. And then we had actually a very interesting question from Max Crocci, I hope I pronounced the name correctly, which has to do with attitudes. So there was this famous incident when Google Street Review was being brought to Germany. There are quite a few Germans who actually objected to being on that one. And so his question was, this is really one of the most important data sets upon which we can build to self-driving cars. How then, for example, does Germany this kind of AI technology into its automotive industry? So it's a more industry-specific question related also to German attitudes. And we had another industry-related questions, and we will extend by 5 minutes if that's fine by everyone, so we have time, which is about what is the future from Chris Adams? What's the future for scan X-ray recognition in medicine? It seems to be better than human radiologists. So question, is the machine better than humans? Who wants to take both or one of the questions? Who wants to have a first go at them?
Anton, it's your turn.
Yeah, okay, so I'm about, of course, Germany has the kind of a very ambivalent view on usage of data, you know, especially on private data. This is due to our history, you know. I'm just mentioned Gestapo and Stasi, you know, who basically were spying for quite some time actually on German population with terrible actually results in the end. So German society is very hesitant in kind of giving away actually private data, but only where it's visible. This is the funny thing, you know. So of course Germans are part of social networks and they give away all their data, you know, without thinking much about it. And Google Street View, I think, is a very nice example of this strange ambivalent behavior, because I think under German privacy rules, Google Street View would have been perfectly okay, because there is no real private data that is shown to somebody, you know, on the internet, you know. Of course, if it's not allowed under German terms to basically take pictures of the interior of your house, yeah, this of course, but that's not what Google is doing. But still, Google is of course aware of its how it's actually perceived by German society. So they allowed people to get actually their houses blurred and so on, you know. And German car manufacturers, yeah, they have their own data sets, you know, which is again perfectly fine if it's public, if it's not private data, if it cannot relate to a person. This is the important part in the German privacy, also in the GDPR. You're not allowed actually to store data, you know, that relates to an individual, you know, but of course, you know, pictures of streets, even buildings, don't relate to individuals. So it's under our laws, no problem.
Well, but AI could.
Of course, AI again, you know,
AI
the question
could
is,
yeah,
AI, that's the thing, you know. If you have enough data, you can relate nearly anything to everything, more or less.
That's the problem.
So the question is, how complicated is it? That's actually what I think, you know. And we know that secret services can basically, if they put enough resources into something, they can find out a lot actually with the data that's available. And so I think this is particular in Germany, but in principle, if we look at social networks, I think Germans behave very similar to other actually users worldwide. So there's not too much of a big difference. There's a difference in how new technology is perceived, you know, which is a problem by itself. You know, I could have another half an hour talk about this, you know, and but I would leave a little bit of room to Wendy to comment.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm as someone who's very nervous on German roads because you all drive so fast, and I think each country, every country in the world has its own line it won't cross. In Germany, Germans want to be able the freedom to drive as fast as they want on a road, and I'm terrified of automated cars in Germany. In the UK, we always refuse to have ID cards. That's our red line. America's guns. I'm not quite sure what the one in French is, but what France is, something to do with wine probably. But anyway, in the UK, it's digital ID. We don't like ID cards. So introducing any sort of digital ID is really difficult. And I think going forward, these are very important. And I, you know, Julia asked about use of responsible AI in industry, and I was going to make the point that, of course, industry is using the biometrics, as she says, to you know, to track its own employees, and that needs to be built into the system as well. And the whole thing about AI can find people, can link things up, and how we protect our privacy, and that is really, really complicated. And I'll come do Chris's question at the end. Yeah, I mean, AI can be trained. You can have AI systems trained on data that means they're more efficient and more accurate than human beings, but that doesn't take you have to keep the human in the loop. So you can get the AI system to look at the scans and the and do things more efficiently and more accurately, but then it's not the AI that's going to tell the person they've got cancer, right? So, and I think that also there are always difficult cases that where you need the human to interpret, and what will happen is, just as we have with accountancy and finance, when the AI is allowed to do the sort of the graft work, the boring, if you like, monotonous work, then the human beings, the radiologists, will be able to do more creative things and use their skills to do that, just as we've done with finance and accounting industry. So we should finish there, shouldn't we? But I could talk about Antonia, I could talk about this for ages.
Yeah, we could have another session, actually, part 2 and part 3, I guess. Yeah.
This is just the beginning for the BGA, so we will definitely invite you back. I will have to close today's session. We are running a little bit over time, but I think it just is testament to the interest in the discussion and to the very interesting insights that you have offered. So thank you both very much, Wendy and Antonia, for coming, and I'll hand over to Antonia to close the session.
Yes, thank you so much. Also from me to all our panelists for joining us this afternoon. It was really very insightful and thought-provoking, and just underlined the importance of British-German dialogue on AI. So I'm very grateful that you could all take the time to be a part of this exchange. Thank you as well to everyone in the audience for joining. Keep an eye on your inboxes for further BGA events. We have one coming up with the head of the Ethics Council in Germany, so a good follow-up to this conversation. Yes, so thank you very much again, and I hope you all have a good rest of the afternoon and a good weekend.